Okay, seems that people stopped trickling in. I'm going to go ahead and click play on our monitoring NGINX deployments with Sumo Logic.
Hello, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. My name is Damian Curry, and today I'm being joined by Drew from Sumo Logic, and we're going to be talking about monitoring NGINX deployments with Sumo Logic. And so just to kick things off, like I said, my name is Damian Curry. I am the Community Alliances Technical Director here at NGINX. And Drew, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. Hey, everyone. Thanks, Damian. My name is Drew Horn. I'm the Technology Alliances Director at Sumo Logic. So I work with all of our technology partners, NGINX and F5 included, obviously, to help work with them and design solutions and integrations with our platform. So thanks again for having me today, Damian. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. And we might as well just jump right in here. So,
okay. So just quick review of what we have available, right? So in our app catalog, right, you can come in, you can install any application you want with Sumo, right? They're all free. All of these apps include out-of-the-box content to, take all the logs and metrics that you're sending in and, parse that, aggregate that, and visualize it. So just wanted to step through some of the things we've got here. So on the F5 side, for those of you using Big IP, we have an LTM app that's going to, give you visibility into the operations and security of that load balancer. So feel free to check that out, especially if you're having, if you're responsible for reliability of your of Big IP and NGINX. It's nice to be able to have give visibility into those all in one spot. Very similar dashboards and dashboards and visualizations in that application to what we're going to walk through today. On the NGINX side, so we've got a handful of apps here. We have NGINX apps for the open source distributions, as well as NGINX Plus, which are the same as the NGINX apps. There's just some additional views tied to some of the additional features and functionality, and especially the additional metrics that the HTTP API module that NGINX Plus delivers. So I'm going to walk through those, and I'll just kind of call out what we're looking at here and what's available in the open source distro as well. You'll see here there's two versions of each app. We have the NGINX ULM, which stands for Unified Logs and Metrics. All four of these apps on the right are ULM apps. And then we have the NGINX Ingress ULM app, and those are also very, very similar. The only difference being we're going to be showing the metrics that we're able to collect from the Kubernetes Ingress controller. And then again, we have NGINX Plus and NGINX Plus Ingress. And then finally, we have some time here at the end of the call today. I'll show off the Global Intelligence app we have for NGINX. So let's take a quick look at some of the dashboards. I won't walk everyone start to finish through every single one of our dashboards here. We got quite a bit of stuff here. If you install any of the NGINX apps, you'll have a folder for logs, you'll have a folder for metrics, you'll have a folder for some of the pre-baked searches that we've worked with the NGINX team and some of our joint customers to define. You can always go in and take any of these searches and configure monitors and alerts on these. Everything in all of these applications is extensible. Just a starting point with some of the kind of key use cases we wanted to bake in for you. So in addition, at the top level of these applications, you'll have an overview dashboard as well. So that can be a good starting point to take a look at all the data, surface any high-level issues that you may want to drill down into when doing investigations.
So yeah, I do love the overview. If you can, kind of gives you that starting point of, okay, what's on fire? Where do I have to go? And instead of having a page with 25 different graphs and all this different stuff that doesn't make any sense, I love this little beginning top part, especially with the critical errors and the visitor locations is a super powerful tool you guys have there.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, you're giving us all the IPs from the load balancer, so you're making it easy for us. At the top here, you'll see across all these dashboards, right? We're aggregating all of the data that we're getting into one spot. So, you know, you can obviously, you know, filter this data by, you know, a subset of clusters, namespaces, any of the resources available here, if you're interested in digging into a particular subset of the data. And then, you know, just walking through some of these, visitor locations, critical error messages. We have responses over time over here on the right. And we're showing some timeline data here with the different types of responses. So client errors, redirects, server errors, or successes, right? This can give you some visibility into over time any changes in trend of these different responses, right? And so this poor cluster, we've been pounding it with Locus here for a couple days now. So just for example, maybe drilling into some of the server errors, if I want to take a look at the error logs, what I can do is I can come in and just run a query here, and while I'm going to get a bunch of logs here, right? So one of the things that you can do, right? We're looking at an aggregation here, and you can come in and take a look at, you know, the entire set of messages here. But one thing that you could do, right, just to kind of give you a quick summary of what's going on, is use our log reduce operator. And so what log reduce is going to do is it's going to cluster similar log messages together based off of, you know, different patterns that we're identifying, you know, in the log messages themselves, and just try to reduce some of the noise from the data to try to tease out what's going on here, right? And so coming in, running log reduce here real quick, we see here that a couple of different common groupings here based off of the errors that are coming in, right? So we've got one here: payment failed, insufficient balance. So, you know, maybe this is more of a user error. I think we've all been there before with insufficient balances. And then another one down here, only 93 error messages, right? There's some account creation failure. So, you know, we've got 670 messages here. You know, 15% of those are, you know, tied to a potential critical error that we'd want to investigate. So log reduce is a great tool to use to drill down into, you know, a large set of error messages and kind of tease out something that you may want to look into. So
yeah, especially being able to correlate them and group them down, because I'm sure if anybody's used to looking at NGINX error logs, you usually get a lot of the same one. And when you're just looking at the log files, it's really hard to tell, like, hey, maybe you do have that error that is a user generated error, and that's not a concern. So it's a lot of white noise that can make it hard to be able to pull out the messages that actually matter to your infrastructure.
Yep. Okay, a couple more things on the overview dashboard. Down here on requests and connections. So these are all primarily metrics driven dashboards you're seeing here. So we'll give you a summary of current connections, active, idle, drop connections, accepted connections per request, and then the current requests that you have with a Spark line. And then we plotted out some time series data here: accepted and dropped connections per second, total requests per second, failed handshakes, and session reuses. So, okay, so maybe jumping in down here on failed handshakes, just an example of how you can kind of, you know, pivot based off of some of the metrics that we're seeing here down into Kubernetes and do some root cause analysis here. So we've got a little spike here from, looks like yesterday. So just clicking on that, you'll see here are all of the key value pairs, all of the tags that we've been able to associate and link to this error, right? This is that enrichment process I was talking about earlier. So, you know, just in a click here, I can see failed handshakes per second. I have visibility, you know, into the instance, the service, the pod, and the cluster where this came from, right? And so I can hop over and take a look at the different entities here. We've got, you know, the pod that this is associated with, deployment, service, etc. So what we can do is click on this entity here and jump into the entity dashboard. And what this is going to do is this is kind of hopping into the Kubernetes hierarchy, right? So our Kubernetes solution, I'll kind of load up some of this, the full hierarchy here. right? So Explorer View is going to give us visibility, again, into the entire cluster, right? And we've got this nice hierarchical view that you can slice a few different ways. So we popped in here into the service view, but you can also look at the same data from a node perspective, namespace perspective, and deployment perspective. Clicking in here, we got popped into this NGINX Ingress pod. And over here, we'll get some metrics on the pod, the status, CPU usage, memory, the overall health, information on the actual image, the actual deployment, excuse me, and then some metrics on resource utilization. So maybe let's drill down into the actual container here, go all the way down to the bottom. And here's the image I mentioned earlier. Resource utilization. And then again, we've also attached logs. So trying to give you a nice view of metrics, logs, all unified together here with information about the cluster. And we can see here, we've got the latest recent 100 container pod events, as well as error logs. And so just hopping into Explore View, we've gone down here and we can see, we're getting some error messages from the ingress controller, no live upstreams while connecting to the upstream client. So this is the part where I would probably just call Damien and ask him to perform additional troubleshooting. What's wrong, Damien? Can you please fix it for me?
Yeah, exactly. And this is the really, because even just to get to this part with just a Kubernetes cluster, it would probably be taken 20 minutes to drill down to this level of going, okay, where's my pod running? What's the actual error? And trying to track this all down. So this is very, very, very useful. And especially when you get something like this. So this is a pretty common error in NGINX, right? When you are proxying or load balancing this traffic, usually the reason why you're going to see an error is something's wrong with the upstream server where you're actually trying to route that traffic. And that's exactly what's happened here. A request came in. It was trying to just get on the login page there on the upstream, and you got the whole Bank of Sirius app. But there was none of the hosts in that pool were actually alive and ready. So now obviously you found, okay, we've got a scaling issue. My front end app is being overloaded or is not scaling up right. And now you can at least know where you need to go start digging next, right? And you go from this, generic error of, hey, there was a little spike here, and then being able to dig down this quickly into not only what the actual error coming out of NGINX was, but where it's happening and all of this different information, and being able to get that so quickly is so powerful. And now I'm guessing we can now drill down into that front end service, right? And see what was going on actually with those pods when this error happened as well, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so that's the even better part there, because you can quickly identify what the NGINX error was, and then also go, oh, okay, well, now I know where to look. So what was going on with that? And, especially when you're dealing with these chained services, it might not actually be that front end app. It could have been that the front end app was offline because the ones it was trying to route to were causing it issues too. So being able to correlate all of this is just such a powerful tool.
All right, great. Yeah, thanks for the context there, man. So I think, we've gone through an example here of how to, take a look at some errors coming in from the ingress controller, hop down into all the way down to the pod, identify some issues. The other thing I wanted to take a look at today is, some of the other dashboards that we have made available for NGINX and for NGINX Plus, right? People on the call here, you may not be actually even using the NGINX ingress controller, right? You can, NGINX is a flexible tool. It can be deployed a bunch of different ways. There's a bunch of different features and functionality. And again, with the help from the NGINX team, right, we put together quite a bit of content and made that available for users to review here, right? So the NGINX Ingress ULM app, I am going to just step through this app because it kind of has everything we need here. But again, all of the logs and then, all of the visualizations associated with logs are available in all of the apps. And then some of the stuff here will be tied to the HTTP API module from a metrics perspective. So
yeah, and while we are definitely focusing around Kubernetes here today, that's what I think one of the reasons why I like Sumo Logic so much is because it's not just Kubernetes. It can correlate your Kubernetes environment and your existing, legacy, more, traditional application deployments. So the main thing is, coming from somebody who used to run systems for way too many years, you need that single pane of glass, right? If you have multiple places to go for troubleshooting, it's just going to make your life horrible. So being able to have that one stop for, yeah, this is Kubernetes, but it's also these old apps, and it's also looking at my on-prem infrastructure and my cloud infrastructure. It's such a powerful tool there.
Cool. Well, yeah, let's do a quick tour through some of the content that we've got available here. So the first area I want to talk about is, visitor patterns, right? So being able to get visibility into some of the things you can't control. Who's accessing your site? Where are they coming from? What devices are they using? What is their behavior? When are they accessing it? Being able to view this, being able to filter this by different clusters or namespaces, deployments by, all the way down to an HTTP status code, right? Can really help you kind of, tease out any anomalous behaviors and get out in front of any potential issues before they occur. So what you're seeing here on this page is visitor access types. So we're listing out, the platforms that are hitting the load balancer, browsers and operating systems, both desktop and mobile device versions, and then some sample time series data here. And again, all of this is extensible. We're looking back 60 minutes, that can be adjusted, right? We plotted out a time series here. You can bucket this data differently, but good starting point to get some visibility into access.
I think on this page too, the interesting thing too is it's not even just helping you troubleshoot, right? This could also help your development efforts and where you need to focus moving forward. So if you see all of a sudden you have a ton of, iPad or an iOS devices, well, maybe you should look at building an app for that, or, being able to tailor your application to how your users want to interact with it.
Yep. Yeah, good point. So there's what are they using to interact, with your site, and then the where, right? So this can also help, from a capacity planning, where do you want to deploy different, different stacks of your application geographically. So visitor locations we're plotting out globally, and at least for me domestically, where users are coming from here on the map, and you can always drill down into this. And then is again some time series data, visits by country and by US regions over time. Again, these are just templates, right? You can adjust them based off of your user behaviors. Okay, and then some additional visitor traffic insights. So we got some feedback again from some of our customers on some of the data we want to show from an insights perspective. So one of the other things we've added here is the mix of HTTP methods, with the thinking that being able to understand things like creating and deleting data can be a little bit more resource intensive. So while aggregating this maybe across your entire set of deployments may not reveal some immediate insights, again, you can filter this data by pretty much any dimension that you want that we've collected tags on, and dig into that. Another helpful one here is, let me go back up to the title here, top 10 search terms from popular search engines. So for search engines that are referring people over to your website, we've captured the search terms that they're using when heading over to your website, right? So this could be helpful even from a product or product marketing perspective.
Yeah, and again, looking at planning, right? You can look at using the media type served, like, okay, well, apparently I need a better CDN, or I need to look at what I'm offloading where. And yeah, the analytics for the marketing side is amazing as well. Just being able to see how people end up on your site is so important for how do you keep people coming to your site, right?
Yeah, and we don't have default content here, but right, you could take this same media type data and you could cut that by geography. So it might be interesting to understand how users in different geographies are interacting with your site, what types of media they're interacting with.
and also being able to see, possible abuse too. Where are people hammering a certain type of file trying to compromise your site? Are they, is everybody coming from one region hitting one page, which, might be a clear sign that of abuse from a place where you shouldn't be expecting normal traffic.
Yep. Yeah, I've got an example here on that actually here in a minute. It's a good point. Okay, so another example here, HTTP upstreams. So we're going to give you some overview data on the number of upstreams, the servers, and then we've got some content here on 400 and 500 response percentages. So lower is better by upstream. And so we list out the upstreams here, and then the actual individual upstream servers here, right? So being able to just quickly understand, if you've got all red for a particular upstream, that might be a different troubleshooting workflow than a particular high error rate, high error percentage for a single potential upstream server.
Yeah, and this is a great example of the added benefit of NGINX Plus too, right? Where we're exposing this information in real time through an API. So these request per seconds and response codes, and the health percentage of the upstreams aren't something that's being scraped. It's something that's being presented in real time by the NGINX Plus status API. So you're getting that information a lot quicker and being able to, like you say, dice it up and figure out what's going on in real time.
Great, and then digging down into some of the metrics here, we've got requests and response metrics here. So we've got 100 to 500 responses cut by your upstreams over here on the right, charted out over time. And then on the left side, we've got requests per second, and these are some of the metrics coming in from the NGINX Plus HTTP API module. We've got requests per second, received traffic per second, sent traffic per second, upstream server header time, upstream response time. So, some of this data here, depending on how you want to cut it, right, you could also apply outlier analysis using our outlier operator here to automatically maybe alert on anomalous activity. So if you're seeing, big, large spikes that are multiple deviations outside of, the normal behavior, that's something that you could alert on, capture all the relevant context about that, shoot it out to Slack, shoot it to email, whatever, and then interact with that and jump in and start digging into root cause analysis.
Yeah, which is, again, another super powerful thing to have in this more modern way of doing it, rather than saying, oh, okay, well, if I see a server go down or I see this happen, but instead being able to look at, well, no, this is anomalous behavior, rather than, oh, you hit a threshold, but the threshold might be fine at some times a day and it might be terrible at another time of day. So having that anomaly detection is another really, really cool tool that you guys provide.
Yeah, I mean, the idea is, right, the idea is to get out in front of issues before they become big problems, right? So yeah. Just being able to identify those changes and trends, attach appropriate contextual information, and get to the bottom of it as fast as you can is, right, that's the goal. And speaking of which, right, we've got health monitors as well. This is being provided by the NGINX Plus module. So failed health checks per second, failed upstream server checks, as well as unhealthy and unavailable upstream servers. And I won't spend too much time on this one here. Very similar data, it's just tied to HTTP server zones. And then more outlier analysis. So we put together some pre-baked charts here looking at server errors, client errors, bytes served, and number of visitors. And then what we've done here up at the top is you can change the time slice from the default here. And then these three parameters here are tied to our outlier operator. So the window is like how far back do you want to look, how many events. The threshold is the number of standard deviations from the mean. And then consecutive is how many times do you want to wait to actually trigger that. So if something is triggered with a given window and threshold, and that happens 3 times consecutively, we're going to alert here, right? So all of this is configurable. And you can add these to any of the other panels as well using our outlier operator.
That's great. Let's say it.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Damien. Anything
Oh,
else?
no. I was gonna say, well, now we're getting into the real fun stuff when we're looking at the threat intelligence and all that fun.
Yeah, you called it out earlier. So again, a load balancer turns out to be a great place to analyze potential threats. Who'd have thought, right? So Sumo Logic, right? We have an OEM threat intelligence feed from CrowdStrike. Their indicator of compromise list is baked directly into our platform, right? No secret. Go check out the documentation online on what's available, what content is in that feed, and how you can interact with it. We built out a dashboard here with some examples for you to get started on. And so what happens is when we see a log come in with an IP address with these panels, we'll perform a lookup against that threat intelligence feed. And if we find a match, then you'll start seeing data in here. So this demo environment is obviously having a bad day. We've got a couple of different charts I wanted to walk through here. So threat by actors, we'll parse out the actual actors that are associated with the IPs or IP addresses and chart them out here. Geographical, obviously a no-brainer. Where people, where these IPs associated with, where these threats originating from. What are some of the highly malicious URLs associated with these threats? What is the breakdown of malicious confidence? So is there a low amount of confidence that particular alerts are malicious, medium, or high? We also break down by sources. So you can send data to Sumo Logic from a handful of different sources. Some of our customers have dozens or maybe hundreds of different sources. So being able to understand, which source is associated with the logs that we found matches with, it can be helpful in troubleshooting. Maybe you want to go, if that source is associated with a particular platform, it may be helpful to understand that and go in and make a configuration change to that platform. And then finally, we've got some tabular data here. And this is where we're just listing out some of the additional fields that are in the IOC list that may be helpful for giving you some insight into what may be the issue.
Yeah, and again, just being able to have this information and then implement that at the NGINX layer and make sure you're blocking these requests before they get to actual application that could be compromised is again so helpful when you're running this sort of infrastructure.
Yeah, so people on our platform, you can alert on this in multiple ways, right? You can configure webhook connections to do some automated remediation. For our Cloud SIM users, you can actually take these issues and route them over to Cloud SIM, or you can actually interact directly with the SOAR as part of playbook execution in responding to security events. Okay, one last thing here to cover again is our global intelligence service. So again, we've taken a look at the data across the entire Sumo Logic customer population, and with respect to NGINX, we put together a handful of benchmarks. And this application, free to come in and install if you're using NGINX, free, open source, or NGINX Plus, doesn't matter. Go in, check it out. What we'll do is we'll build similar benchmarks for your organization, and you can compare them with the global benchmark. So the dashboard here for golden signals is comparing signals of load, which is requests per hour, throughput, which is responses by type, as well as errors. And so, unusual levels of these signals compared to these benchmarks can indicate configuration, operational, or capacity planning issues. So it's just another way to look at the same data that we've collected to try to help give you more context into maybe like suboptimal NGINX configurations, or unusual behavior that may seem normal to you, but when looking across the global population is an anomaly. So that might be, it's just another good way to potentially get out and, to get out in front of issues before they can become problematic.
Yeah, and also to give you a little peace of mind, right? It can be a little scary at times when you look and go, man, what are all these bots doing on my website? And then you realize, like, oh no, this is just how bots crawl the internet. Like, this is standard. I'm actually not getting hit that hard, right?
Yep. So just rattle off a couple of these dashboards real quick. So we've got average requests per second. So for each of these, you'll see, what are the P50 and P75 benchmarks across the global population, and then what are my organization's benchmarks, right? So here on the left, for P50 requests per second, 0.2, right? The global benchmark is 0.1, so performing well there. For P75, you see 0.2 for my organization. And the global population being at 0.8, so performing very well there. On the right, just a trend line on that same calculation right there to give you a sense of how it's been changing over time. I don't have any dummy data in here on gigabytes served per request, but very similar. We talked a little bit about HTTP methods earlier. What is the mix of post, delete, get, and put across your company versus the global benchmarks? Moving over to throughput, response type mix. So, we took a look at some server errors earlier. Here's a breakdown of that and a benchmark against the entire population. So we've got server errors, success, client errors, and redirects. So seem to be performing well since the global benchmark is literally off the charts. And then finally, error signals here. So we've got non-200 response status code percentages. So just taking a look at some of the response codes here, comparing them against the global benchmarks. And then finally, a little bit more server code error mix, my company versus the benchmark. So we've got our 500 errors here. And then we've got log levels as well. So, tweaking how you're logging, too much, too much informational logging versus like error logging or warnings, right? Something to keep an eye on just to make sure that, you're not necessarily overwhelming your system from a logging perspective.
Yeah, that's great information to have, and being able to, like you said, compare what's going on in your environment versus, what other people are seeing in theirs is really good, especially looking at things like the, request type and things like that can definitely be helpful for being able to identify possible malicious actors.
Well, I think that's it. I think I'll leave it at that. I've covered quite a bit on what we've got here in terms of default content in NGINX. So I'll hand it back to you, man. Thanks.
Yeah. So I guess the last couple of minutes we have here, I mean, what's next? So please check out our reference architecture project. We're doing constant development on that. We've got a nice little short URL here that you can hit. And we're gonna have this turnkey solution as we've been working with Drew. We'll hopefully get those some pull requests put in and get everything merged into the general code base, so it'll be even easier to do than it was for this demo. And then yeah, definitely, I mean, check out everything that Sumo Logic's been doing. I mean, everything we've seen today is really cool, and the extra help that it can provide with just troubleshooting and streamlining, especially around the Kubernetes solution, is really impressive. And yeah, thanks everybody for joining us. The slide deck and the video of the presentation will be available later. And yeah, hope everybody enjoyed the talk, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yep. Thanks everyone for joining, and thanks as always, Damon. Appreciate you joining in today.
Yeah, thanks, Drew. It was a good time. We'll see everybody later.
All right. Thanks everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A. Otherwise, you can join us on our Slack channel. And if you want more information about this integration or others, I'm putting in some of the links in here that you can reach out as well as try it for yourselves. So I really appreciate everyone joining us, and have a great day.